will increase your efficiency 20% if you learn to do the tough things first, the ones you don't want to do.
Ray Zinn now imparts his management philosophy in Tough Things First. In this series, Zinn covers it all, from the essence of human happiness.
If you're going to make it a consistent practice of working Saturdays just because you think you've got to work 80 hours a week to be successful, you're just flat out wrong.
To the downside of venture capital.
People said, well, don't sweat the small things. Well, I guarantee if you don't sweat the small things, the big things are going to become a mess.
And the essence of entrepreneurial discipline.
Don't want to wait until you jump off the cliff to grab a parachute.
Now here's Ray Zinn, Silicon Valley's longest-serving CEO. I'm Rob Artigo, back for Tough Things First, the podcast. You probably remember me as a longtime broadcast journalist at KGO 810 in San Francisco. Here with me is Ray Zinn, the longest-serving CEO in Silicon Valley history. Hi, Ray.
Hi, Rob. Good to be with you today.
Great to be back. And this, of course, is one of our favorite occasions. It's a special edition of the Tough Things First podcast. And if the listener wants to watch it, all they have to do is navigate to the website, toughthingsfirst.com, and then click on the Watch Now link, and right next to this podcast, obviously, the intro to the podcast, and watch instead of just listen, which is great. And I'm wearing my sports coat today, it works out great. Ray, one of the notes that we got as a suggested topic was content creators today are shaping far more than purchasing decisions and trends. They're shaping public opinion and major national and international issues, which we know. I mean, we hear about this all the time. X, formerly known as Twitter, other platforms, people are creating content all the time, and they're influencing. And you know, we work together on the book Essential Leadership that's forthcoming. We're proud to say, and you did a whole chapter on how everybody's an influencer, and the essential leader has to look at themselves as a influencer. But are they also content creators in a general sense?
They sure are. I mean, there's a program on TV. It's called American Greed, and what's interesting is that the way you live your life, what you do with the resources that you have, influences others, either for good or for bad. And so the concept of being an influencer is very important. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening in the political environment. You know, whether it be Donald Trump being sued, for election interference, or for his business dealings, or whether it be Biden regarding his son and other problems that his son is having, that has an influence on the election. Or if you're running a company, if you are doing things which are not legitimate, or appear to be greedy, you may not be doing something that's against the law per se, but if you come across as a greedy individual, where you're focusing on yourself. In fact, that's one of the things that they're complaining about Trump, is that he's focused on himself, and then Kamala Harris says she's focused on others. So it's a way that they have of steering the influences you would either toward them or against them. And so, when we think about what kind of influence we're having, either in our business dealings or employment or socially, we have to be careful what kind of an image we're portraying. And in our book that we're coming out with soon, Essential Leadership, we cover that. That's one of the major chapters, is what kind of an influencer are you? Because you are influencing, whether you're a school teacher, or whether you're a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer, or whatever your field of business is, you influence. And in one of our podcasts, we're going to cover the effect of nurturing your influence as you would, or those that you do influence, those who you're associated with. And so you can't say just because you're a student or you're a school teacher or a nurse or maybe a construction worker that you're not having influence, but you do. I mean, that affects your income. That affects your merit review, is how well you are influencing others. And so getting the job done as you would, working as a team building, even as an individual contributor, whether you're working from home or whether you're working at the office, you're having an influence. In fact, what's interesting is we deal with working from home and either using some kind of media to interact with others. It's actually you have a bigger challenge because you're not directly in front of someone. You're actually doing it vis-a-vis some kind of a media connection, and and maybe they don't even see your face. Maybe they just hear your voice, so they can't read the expression on your face, or how you're dressed or how your interaction is. And so if you're going to be a good influencer, make sure that when you are working from home or working through some kind of a media interface, that you do it correctly. That your tone of your voice, the way you're coming across, the way you're answering questions, is appropriate. And so, one of the things they're talking about in the upcoming election is how Trump comes across, or how Kamala Harris comes across. And so how we come across is what we're talking about in this podcast, is how are we influencing?
Right. And you made a valuable point there about, and your points are always valuable to me, but specifically about the fact that you don't have to be like a TikTok participant where you're out videoing yourself and then sending out a message. That there are subtle ways in which you are a content creator, that you, even in an email, you're a content creator in a literal sense, and that those things are influential. And I guess the question you have to ask yourself is this an appropriate message to send? Am I sending the message that would be something that I want shared with other people, and do I want other people to emulate it and do, for example, we talk about the election is do I want to vote to go one way or another? Maybe what I'm saying sounds like I'm interested in one candidate, but I'm actually going to vote for another. You've mixed the message, and you're not being a good influencer, obviously, and your content that you've created is confusing.
Well, the interesting thing is that Donald Trump, for example, says, "I am who I am." Well, we all are that. We all are who we are. But depending upon how we want to come across, it depends upon what kind of influence we want to be. We want to be, a negative influence or a positive influence. And hopefully we want to be a positive influence, either because we're selling a product or because we're trying to build a relationship with another person. And as I said, we're going to cover that in another podcast. But our sociability, the kind of preeminence we want to be in whatever setting that is important. I know that in this upcoming election, they're talking about Donald Trump's. I wish he would back down on the rhetoric. Talk about policies and issues rather than talking about the person. But he's not listening. He's just doing it the way he wants to do it. And then the same thing with Kamala Harris. She's doing it because that's who she is. And maybe they'd both want to say, I want you to vote for me for what I can do, not for how I'm acting or how I'm coming across, which is difficult to separate. I mean, you're bifurcating. You're trying to say, well, I'm really not the person that I'm portraying myself to be. I'm really somebody else. And so if you want to come across as genuine, then of course, you want to be who you are, but by the same token, though, you don't want to come to a funeral dressed in a bathing suit. So, you want to make sure your interaction is appropriate for whatever role it is you're trying to achieve. Whether you're trying to be in a mentoring role, or whether you're trying to be receiving information from someone where they're trying to mentor you. So the information or the kind of input you want, or output you want, depends upon what kind of a image you're trying to portray, which is, again, this influencing image. If if you've watched TikTok, you've seen some really goofy looking TikTok videos, because what the person's trying to portray comes across, to me, is kind of silly and stupid, but to others, they enjoy it because it's what they want to see. It's it's how they want to be influenced, as you would.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we are going to cover some territory in, being an influencer for good in an upcoming podcast. So I appreciate the fact that we, this is a different area of being an influencer, but obviously the message ties in with the other one, which is, being an influencer for good. So you can join the conversation at toughthingsfirst.com. We appreciate you being here to watch or listen, as this is a special edition of the Tough Things First podcast. Your questions and comments are always welcome. Follow Ray on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And, you please rate this podcast so that we can keep the momentum going and grow this podcast more times over, as it is a popular podcast. Check out Ray's books, The Zen of Zen 1, 2, and 3. It's a whole series. And also, of course, the flagship book, which is Tough Things First. Be prepared, because the ball's going to drop soon on this book, Essential Leadership, and you won't want to miss that. Thank you again, Ray.
Thanks, Rob.
You've been listening to Tough Things First, candid talk with Silicon Valley's longest-serving CEO, Ray Zinn. Drop by the contact page at toughthingsfirst.com for more about the book, more podcasts, and links to Ray's Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages to keep up with Ray Zinn's wisdom daily.